James Everett.
James Everett.
Now James Raymond Everett.
8 years after a man was found dead in Rosemount, Minnesota, DNA science is finally helping to bring closure to his family. Today, investigators revealed that they had identified the John Doe as 48-year-old James Everett. They shared more about how exactly they cracked the cold case.
After almost 10 years, a cold case has been solved. The body of a man from Steuben County who went missing almost 10 years ago has been identified. WENY's Alexandra Dern is here to tell us how a 2014 John Doe in Minnesota turned into James Everett from Cohocton. Alexandra, how did all of this come about?
Nick, James Everett's body was found in 2014. The 48-year-old man went missing in 2013, but closure for his family did not come until today. And that closure came about after investigators used technology to help solve this case.
On September 29th of 2014, approximately 12:07 p.m., Rosemount police officers were dispatched to the area of 146th Street West and Burnley Avenue.
Rosemount, Minnesota Police Chief Michael Dahlstrom says the remains of James Everett were found in an old utility shed along the railroad tracks in 2014. Other Minneapolis area agencies were called in to help with the crime scene because the cause of death could not be determined.
It appeared that the building or the hut had been turned into a makeshift shelter. So they found a piece of rebar was reinforcing the door to keep it closed. There was also some wire. There was makeshift bedding. There was items of food and water throughout from a local gas station.
But at the time, those remains were known as just John Doe, due to the condition the remains were found in and because there was a lack of other evidence.
Unfortunately for us, during the investigation, there wasn't any form of identification, no wallet, no credit card, nothing else that could identify the decedent at that time.
Investigators uploaded DNA to an FBI system and created a facial reconstruction. When no match could be found, the community buried the John Doe 5 years ago. After exhausting hundreds of leads, a DNA company finally helped investigators identify him as James Everett.
This case was solved because a distant family member was researching their ancestry. Open source DNA and forensic genealogy could help others get similar closure too.
Now, Everett's cause of death is unknown, but his wife thanked investigators and the community for its compassion for a stranger. She hopes this story provides hope for other families waiting for answers about a missing loved one.
Thank you, Alexandra.
A Minnesota cold case involving a John Doe has now been solved thanks to new DNA technology. 8 years ago, the man was found dead in a railroad shed in Rosemount. Jennifer Hoff tells us how the once missing man now has a name and a story.
Down a stretch of railroad tracks in Rosemount, right through town, was an old shed, a signal hut that for one man was made into his home.
We believe that he had been in the shelter for approximately a year.
Until one day, the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office says a worker found his body there on September 29th, 2014.
You get one chance at this, you want to do it right the first time.
There was no wallet or ID, only a jacket, earring, and knife. Police showed the public back then. His information also entered into national databases, and still no answers.
Weeks became months.
Frustrated investigators didn't give up as community members laid John Doe to rest in 2017, only the second time in the history of the ME's office. Then fast forward to this April, when officials working with a DNA lab to search for potential matches hit on one in New York, eventually confirming it was the man's father, finally putting a name to a face the FBI had reconstructed.
ME 2014-4917 was now James Raymond Everett, age 48, from New York. This case was solved because a distant family member was researching their ancestry.
They don't know why he came to Minnesota or why the missing persons case his wife filed was closed, but they do know now he was a self-professed computer geek who loved the Denver Broncos and baking. His wife telling me she's blindsided by the news, but grateful for the closure.
We all had questions, but we could not begin to tell his story until we knew his name. But the story of James Raymond Everett is not ours to tell. It is his family's, and they now have an ending.
The medical examiner says Everett's body was so badly decomposed he couldn't determine how he died, despite previous reports saying that it was natural. He is confident, though, that it wasn't criminal in nature, admitting that's probably an answer they'll just never have. In Rosemount, Jennifer Hoff, KARE 11 News.